So now what we did is just the template of an application that if I click on this counter, would like it to be now changing. What I'd like to do before that is that this number should change, so I'm not going to be putting it directly all the time 18. I want it to be changed. Every time I click on it, it will just keep counting. So the first thing is I'm not going to be using this 18. I would like to make some kind of a variable. So it's an int, so I'm going to make it private. Actually, these all things I'm going to put them private, because normally they should have been private, because we don't want these to be accessible from outside. This should be prepared by us the way we want them. So private, I'm going to make it int, and this is count, or maybe call it value. So this value by default, I want this value to be let's say value is equal to 0. So, or maybe this by default I can put it here, so it's the first thing that I'm doing, put the value to be 0. Now instead of displaying this 18, I just would like to display the value. But I have a problem. Incompatible types. This is an int, and the JText field, it takes a text. Now I said this was the text, so I need to convert this to a text. How can I convert this to a text? Typecasting. Okay, typecasting. Well, that works well when it's a primitive data type, but how do you typecast from a primitive to a class data type? Now, double quotes. I can do something like this, plus value. Yeah. Now this, if I do something like this, this is a number, int, but that I'm going to be adding, when I add a text to an int, what happens is that the result is going to be a text. Now, I made sure that I did not put anything here, which is just an empty text, but I add some number to an empty text. This is some kind of a fix. There's another way, but let's just deal with the fix because you've seen it before, and then we're going to use the proper way later, inshallah. Actually tomorrow, because I don't think we'll be having time to do all these things now. Now I just would like you to be comfortable with this, because what I'm doing here, I'm just converting this int to a string, but in a way by adding to an empty string something that is a number. So this is going to become a text, and that text I'm going to see is going to be displayed inside the text field. Yes.
Why did you bring super?
This one?
Like this.
Why not?
What's the point?
What does this thing here means?
What do you mean?
This text here. If I run it, I'm seeing it here. So this call of the super here is doing a purpose of also setting the title of this thing. So my SwingCounter, let's say. Now by doing this, now what I have is that I'm able to change the title of this whole frame. That's the only purpose of this thing. Before I was having set title, I just wanted to show you that there's a constructor that does that. I can use the constructor as well. This is just to show you the two ways of doing the same thing. Now this is going to work as well. If I run this, this is set title. That's fine. But I want you to realize that there's a constructor. Let's just use the constructor, because there is a constructor that uses this, changes the title. Now let's go back and check the 0 here. You see the 0 is available. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to click here and make this change. So I prepared the variable, and this variable, if I click on it, I'm going to change it, and then I am going to change this text field, what's inside of it. In order for me to do that, I need to implement an interface, a special interface. So the interface is called Action Listener, and it belongs to java.awt.events, which means that as soon as I do this, it's importing this action listener from java.awt.event. And this is an interface. That interface has one method that needs to be implemented. And that method is called action performed. Now, because I'm implementing this action listener, now this is a problem. I need to implement this action performed. So implementing the action performed means I need to override public void action performed action event E. So what is this action event? We're going to see that later. For now, let's forget about it. But what I need to do is just to perform the action and say, okay, that's the action that should be happening when I click on the button. So that action, what is the action? Well, the value, I'm incrementing it. And then the text field should, I'm setting the text of the text field to be the value. But again, this is a text. It should be a text. So this number, this is an int, I'm converting that into a text, and then I'm putting it inside of the text field. Are you okay with this?
Can you repeat it?
What did I do with this? Just this thing.
Yes, sir.
This thing is okay?
Yes.
Okay, fine, because I have seen your eyes. I don't know which part of that. Now, this thing here is just incrementing the value. So what I want to do is that as soon as I click on the button, the value should be incremented. So it was 0, it will become 1. And then what's inside that value, put it in the text field. So the text field was showing 0. Now I remove and I'm going to see 1.
Why did it like last line? It will not show.
It should not show. Inside, the variable is going to be updated, but in the display, nothing is going to be changed. Is that okay?
Can we try?
Of course you will try it. If I click on this run now, the moment of truth, if I click on the button, I should see 1. Oh, your disappointment was priceless. Why? Because did we say that the button should be clicked? Now this action performed, did we attach it to the button? Because now you assume that only the button is performing actions, but not only the button can perform actions. Actually, a lot of different actions, a lot of events can happen in a form. Even this text field can have an action performed, or the label can have an action performed. Well, anyways, some sort of.
Behind the button.
So I need to mention that, I mean, this action performed should be associated to the button, and this is what I did not do. Now I'm going to do that. So what I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it when I'm preparing the button. I'm going to say that the button counter, I need to add action listener, and to add the action listener, oh, ancestor, no, just to add action listener. Now to add the action listener, who is the listener? I need to add the class that implements the interface action listener. And who's the class who's implementing the action listener? This one. This is my first frame, this class itself. So what I'm saying that inside now, what I'm saying that this button, where is the button here? This button is going to be having to execute some action that is coming inside this class, that is programmed inside this class. Every time I click on a button, this button control button counter, this action performed is going to be implemented. It's going to be executed because the action listener is inside this class, the same main class.
Can I use the name of the class instead?
Now, if you use my first frame, it's not going to work.
That's something like
Well, that's something that's, yeah, we can. Well, you have to use maybe new. You have to get a new object from this. But then if you create a new object, this is going to be a duplication of something that you already have.
no, but I'm matching the idea of making another class.
We'll do that later. Now this is not going to be working easily when I have many buttons, but it works fine with one button, just to introduce you to the fact that every time you have an action, first of all you have to program the action, and then you have to link the action to which component is going to do the action. Now I'm going to show you there's a big difference if I link this to the button or if I link it to itself, the text field itself. I can do that. I will show you that, inshallah. Now I have the action. It should be working fine, but I just need to link that action to which component. Now the component, what I said, that this line says that the button is going to be executing this thing every time it will be clicked on it. Every time it's going to be clicked on, this is what is going to happen. Now if I run this thing and move it here so you can see, and now a click, another click, and many clicks. Now it's working as expected, because now every time the button is clicked, the button knows that there's inside this class an action performed. It looks for it, it finds it, and it executes it. Yes. Which line? This one? Now if I remove this last line, and then I need to stop and start again. You click, actually nothing shows, but internally it's changed. How do I know? I can know. I can display, for example, value. Now it will increment and then display the value, which means I'm going to see something here every time I click, but nothing on the frame. If I want to see it on the frame, I need to. But yes, I'll go back to that. But let me bring back what was there before, the counter. I'm just the text of the text field. I'm just changing it to this new value that I just calculated.
So what if I want to put the number in the frame? Like I open the frame and I select C5.
The starting number, you mean? Well, that's another story. I need to program it to not have to be 0, but to read it from the text field. And then instead of doing this, I need to read from the text field. It's something, not a big deal, but I need to convert. Actually, the main thing is, and this is why I started with this example first, and not with this one that has like these two numbers, is that now these text fields contains texts. If I'd like to have an addition of numbers, I need to take the text, convert it to an int, do the operation, and then convert it back to a text. Now convert it to a text, we just saw that there's a trick. You just add a text to a number, it becomes a text. But how about converting a text to a number? Now this is something we haven't seen. I don't want to show all at once. This is the next thing we're going to be doing. But just now, what I'd like you to understand is, now we have these different options, these different controls, and if I'd like a control to be doing an action, I need to specify which one is doing the action, and then what's the action that is going to be done. Yes. Yeah, according to the way we did it here is yes, one action, but this is not the best way to do things. I mean, again, this is just a simple way that it works to introduce the fact that we're implementing an interface and we're having different controls, that we're using them in a graphical user interface. There's a lot of different things going on, so I don't want to add a lot of different things at once. Later on, we're going to be having many buttons, and each button is going to be different things, so we're going to be having many actions performed, how to distinguish between them, etc. So that's another story. Yes?
From where we override the action before?
What do you mean from where? Why do we override? Because we implement this action listener.
Yeah, but from where we override?
From where? From here. This one, action listener, is an interface. This action listener, it has this method, action perform, that needs to be implemented. This one. So this is the one, because I'm implementing action listener, now I have to implement this. Because if I remove it, it's going to tell me my first frame is not abstract and does not override abstract method action performed in action listener. So I'm having this coming from action listener.
I can't implement action listener.
You can what?
I cannot implement action listener. That's no way.
You mean in your code?
Yes,
Well, we'll check that, inshallah. I thought maybe you're talking about here. Now here, is everything okay, inshallah? So it's fine, yes?
Override thing. Override code. Should
should I type the button counter then override it?
Should you type what? The button?
Yeah, the line
45?
is 3.
Okay, 33, okay.
Then override.
Well, because you can do this if you want to, but you need to have this method, because if you don't have this method, this is not going to work. Because you can say, okay, you know what, the action performed is found in this class, but then if you don't have the method that does what's the action, nothing is going to happen. So now what I'd like you to do, and I'm not going to be able to display everything, so I'm going to shorten things up a little bit so you can see more. Now let me just, yeah, maybe now you can see something. So this is where you're going to be able to have some kind of action going on with your classes.